All right, Mr. RDQ and I am Mr. Plain Wayne. We are here ready to break down a little bit of Shang Chi. Um, 2 weeks, almost
Yeah,
3 weeks now.
yeah. It's still settling. That movie was it was, and this is no exaggeration,
Hmm.
it was the cultural equivalent for Asians that Black Panther was for us.
Yes, yes.
And with I think because of Black Panther, it I that's at least how I was able to digest and take this movie in.
Hmm.
We're both martial artists. Um, we both have participated in that world, love that world or that part of the culture.
Hmm.
Um, but like we always tell people, you can't at all experience a culture in snippets and tidbits.
Right.
And so, I loved how the world embraced Black Panther. And because of that, I think it paved the way for something like this to be unapologetically Asian,
Hmm.
celebratory, um, informative, and still fantasy at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. So we haven't talked since the movie
No,
and
yeah,
the table scene. So
yeah,
dad is trying to school this little Katie
right,
and his son on just what it means to be who you are. And he asked her what her real name is. What did that
right.
mean to you?
Well,
Yeah.
it ran parallel to the table scene back in San Francisco,
Hmm.
where he goes to Katie's house before they have their day at work, before they go to work. He takes off his shoes at the door. He's respectful. He gets ready to sit down in a chair, and that chair was being saved for the ancestor who had passed on.
Right.
They talk about ancestry,
Yes.
and Shang-Chi's dad, um, Wen Wu,
Wenwu. Yeah.
it was a really striking parallel or even a striking perpendicular
Hmm.
that he, the villain, was talking to Katie more respectfully than her mom, who was disappointed in her for not being more.
Hmm.
I thought that was super interesting. Like they made him a likable villain.
Hmm.
And the importance that he stressed that what's your name? No, what's your Chinese name?
Hmm.
A name is important. This Mandarin took my name and or took my 10 rings name and then named himself after orange chicken.
Right.
It
Yes.
was that was to me that was kind of the hub of the entire picture was
Hmm.
those two parallel table scenes that flipped how each character was being treated.
Yes.
This supposedly normal Chinese mom on her girl's case for not living up. And
Hmm.
then this supposed big bad 1,000-year-old villain who was
Hmm.
showing her more respect than her own mom did. Like that
Right.
was that was mind blowing to me.
Right. And then the first table scene, the thing that I loved was that push, that nudge. When you gonna marry her?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
Sean was like, "Oh, we're just friends." So
Right, right,
you
right.
know,
And
where
everybody can relate to that. Culturally,
right,
everybody can relate to that.
and
Black families, African families, Greek, Italian, everybody goes through that.
my
And
big
then
fat.
there's always some outside influence, some devil on your shoulder saying, yo, I understand.
Hmm.
It's crazy that again, Wen Wu was the Mandarin, the head of the 10 rings,
Hmm.
and he was stressing family. He
Right.
was really wanting his family to be with him on this journey. That was, I mean,
Yes.
they made him a likable villain, man.
I think that was the, being a Gemini, seeing both sides, where
Right.
it's like hey, he did have that family value. Obviously, when he, meets, the love of his life, or what we know of his life, when he
Right,
meets the love of his life and she's bodying him up with, the softer side of the
right,
yin yang, you know, he puts down the rings.
right.
He starts a family and he
Yeah,
goes to that softer side. He goes to the internal instead of what's been the external 10 rings. He goes
right.
internal. And I'm like, whoa, he really put it down for a while. And the only thing that he did wrong was forget, that people might come after you. Like
Right,
that's what
right.
blew me away. But like the difference in those table scenes, it would crack me up. It was like, wow, in one table scene, you know, the same girl doesn't know it, but Sean is being pressured into marriage, and now Dad is pressuring her into her heritage, like her
Right,
name, which I'm like,
right. Well, I thought he was more inviting her into it
mm-hmm,
because she had been Americanized, because she had been just like Shang
mm-hmm,
using Sean.
mm-hmm,
She hadn't, up until that point, I expected her to say she didn't have a Chinese name because she
mm-hmm.
didn't speak Chinese. She didn't speak Mandarin.
Right,
And so I thought when he asked her that, I thought she wouldn't have an answer, but she did. That was, again, mind blowing to me that, wait a
right,
minute, she's buried under layers and layers of this, and he saw straight to it to pull her out of it.
mm-hmm. Which
So
he
I,
would.
I didn't even think it was pressure. I thought he was instilling pride.
Mm-hmm. So I got to go to you and I talked before, and I'm going to talk about a few of the things that they dropped as far as hints, and then talk about the haters real quick.
Right,
On the way into Shang-Chi's underground fight,
right,
which we saw the trailer for Wong fighting Abomination.
right,
We saw that trailer, but
right.
on the way in, you very strategically brought my attention to the Black Widow fighting the extremist soldier.
Yeah, yeah. There were
Now,
there were all types of little Easter eggs in there. Shouts out to New Rock Stars, Eric Voss for that one. Um, because there were all types of little Easter eggs as they walked through there. I think this
mm-hmm,
is what Marvel, as of late, has done a very good job at, when in the movies where it's not their overpowered original six, their connective tissue is so much better.
mm-hmm,
So just off to the left in a box is a Black Widow fighting an extremist, soldier.
yeah,
Like, what? And
yeah,
then, Wong and Abomination, and then you should probably say spoiler, even though there's
yeah.
some people who might not have seen it. Spoiler alert, check out now if you don't want to hear about it.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler
But you
alert.
got Wong fighting Abomination. That was in the trailer, not a big spoiler, but they leave together. Like they know each other. Like what? And then they cut it, and that's it. You get no more explanation. So it's like, what is going on here? They're weaving connective tissue on a 10th level of wisdom. Like
Mm-hmm.
what are they doing?
The other little tidbit that they put together that it really like blew me away was Bruce Banner for the second time now, when he doesn't know what's going on, mentions vibranium, mentions Wakanda, because in
Mm,
Ultron, he
right,
was like, we've got this strange metal that's being shown up on the ship. It's
right,
from a place called, he didn't know it yet, Wakanda. It's
right,
vibranium. Then in the end, when they're looking at the 10 rings, which actually makes me a little bit more worried now that they don't know where the rings are from, which should be scary. He mentions Wakanda again. He's like, it's not
well,
vibranium, it's not
it's
from
and it's
Wakanda.
it's probably fresh on his mind though, because they went through Endgame,
Mm-hmm,
they went through Infinity War, they went through the snap,
mm-hmm,
and the blip, and
mm-hmm,
so it's probably fresh on his mind in terms of this sort of game changing thing here on Earth that puts Earth on the level with the rest of the nine
mm-hmm.
realms, in Thor's world.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's kind of why he keeps bringing it up, because like he's only mentioned gamma once or twice.
Yeah.
And so vibranium, I think, is just on his mind as as Earth's, like, you got Uru, you've got vibranium, you've got the Infinity Stones. So these minerals, these molecular minerals, these universe changing minerals, excuse me, are that's Earth's contribution. We got this meteorite landed in Wakanda. There's a mountain of it. It's game changing here on Earth. Cap has a shield. Ultron was almost made of it. Vision has it infused in his actual flesh.
Yeah.
So I think vibranium is our game changer.
So Denis Villeneuve, the director of Dune,
Right.
He's saying that the Marvel movies are cookie cutter. He kind of throws back to, you know, what Scorsese was saying about, and this is the haters. I'm talking about haters now. He's saying that the Marvel movies are, you know, just basically a carnival ride. And I went and looked at the movies of his that I've seen. I've seen Prisoners. I've seen Arrival. I've seen Blade Runner, you know, 2047. And I immediately started thinking, I was like, well, hold on, man. Hold
Oh,
on.
here's a cookie cutter too. They're
You're,
formulaic.
you're an amazing director. You really don't have to add this fire to your flame,
Here.
because I know
But
all
for
press
me,
is good press if you can bend it, right? But I
yeah,
hate
but
that
for
that's like
me,
so popular now. Like, he doesn't have to do that. And
but it's
if
weak tea.
say if Dune doesn't do well,
Right.
then he can say, oh, well, the cookie cutter stuff. Well, if the cookie cutter, if that's true, why is this movie doing so well? And
Well,
like,
because like it's weak tea to argue that point for him. That's like saying sugar is sweet. How dare you call sugar sweet? No,
or
it's sweet.
McDonald's isn't food. Now, hey, it's not
No,
gonna
McDonald's
be
is food, bro. Tell that to somebody starving. McDonald's is
right.
damn sure food.
Right. Well,
Like
that's what I'm saying.
but that's exactly my point. Is for him to say that a Marvel movie is cookie cutter. I'm like, yeah, and you're exactly right, and it's tasty cookies. You know.
You know who he didn't mention in these films? He didn't mention DC as a whole. He does mention Nolan, which I think is great. But like, even then, and we'll get to this because you mentioned martial arts. Like, the third film was very hard for me. The Batman, The Dark Knight was very hard for me because as the series went, we went from Batman and Ra's al Ghul and all this amazing martial arts, you know, to The Dark Knight, which was more of a movie, which I thought was dope. Then once it got to the scenes where he fought Bane, and there was criticism on this, the fight scenes looked so slow and bulky, and I'm like, man, guys in the NFL move better than this. Like, even linemen move better and faster than this. I'm like, who did this? And
Well, I mean, but like to bring it back to the cookie cutter and Marvel, because like, I mean, you know, I like I said, it does. I don't see the point in stating the obvious. Yeah, they're formulaic, and if the formula works, so what? You know,
right.
you're not gonna win some high-minded prize. And by the way, Black Panther and Shang Chi were good movies. You don't need an entry point to get into Shang Chi. You didn't need an entry point to get into Black Panther.
Right.
They were just good movies, and the formula works. I'm a Firefly fan. I've spent the last 2 days rewatching the entire series. Formulaic for a Western, formulaic for a space opera, and still good.
But
just because something has a formula doesn't mean that it's bad.
But don't the thing that's made this so successful, I remember we talked about this at the end of Endgame. I think it's a deleted scene where all the directors are sitting around talking to each other. talking about how they had to work with each other to have the
Oh, right. In
continuity of
Marvel
the
Universe.
films.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, if they're on the same street but they have different intersections, okay,
Look,
isn't that what?
every train in the country runs on the same set of tracks, but they're all
Mhm,
different trains.
mhm,
So just because there's a guide rail doesn't
mhm.
mean that you can't have unique stories.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and I know one day, hopefully I'll get you over to some DC. Hopefully.
Nah, it's
He's
good.
he's he's
Nah, no
he's right
need.
there waiting for you.
No need. No need.
Dick
No
Grayson
need.
is Dick Grayson is
I
waiting for you.
liked Bane, I like Dark Knight. I watched them.
Yeah.
But again, in on that end, we'll talk about
Okay,
it.
so Arrowverse, this is what I was gonna say. The Arrowverse was for me the best the best I'll say stream of DC that I've seen in this Marvel versus DC era
Right,
because they do the cookie cutter thing where you've got
right,
Arrow, Arrow is Batman, you've got Flash is mm, I can't say Wonder Woman, but you got Supergirl is that super role. So you've got
right,
the Batman, the Superman, and the Wonder Woman.
right,
So, somebody's got to be bright and smiley. That's the Flash. Somebody's
right,
got to be dark and brooding. That's Green Arrow now. And then somebody's got to be beautiful. And so that's Superwoman,
right,
Supergirl. So
right.
it's like everybody needs some kind of cookie cutter because,
But that's all of cinema. That's why I'm saying his argument doesn't hold water. That's all of
right.
cinema. If you look at Blade Runner 2048, if you look at Dune coming up, I'm sure is going to ride the same hero's journey formula. Um,
Well,
it's all going to be the same. So it's the nuance inside of it. Like, look, I'm a
right.
designer by trade. We all work with the same tools. I am never more creative than when I have restrictions. If
Mm-hmm.
I have every tool in the toolbox, I often am not being my most creative because I believe creativity needs somewhat of that constraint to say, okay, you've got a pencil and paper, go. Not
Mm-hmm.
you've got an Apple computer and an iPad and everything you could use at your disposal. No. With the least, how can you make the most? That's creativity.
Right.
And so the formula shouldn't be a diss. That's not
Mm-hmm.
disrespectful. So
Right.
that's not a shot fired on his part. That's weak teeth to say
Right.
Marvel movies are cookie cutter. It's like I said, it's tasty cookies. Please do
Mm-hmm.
make more,
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. So just like he's saying cookie cutter, what I saw when I saw that film, like martial arts wise, I saw Jet Li, I saw Donnie Yen, I saw Jackie Chan. Like
I
we
for sure
haven't
saw Jackie Chan. For sure saw Jackie.
like like just like you said, you don't have to know the whole universe to get in and drop in and watch this movie.
Mm-mm.
And then what they gave you is something that DC has not done, or really anybody has done, which is lift up an Asian character like highly to a point where if I see a kid wearing that dragon armor,
Yeah,
I'm gonna know that was Shang-Chi.
absolutely. And then they told him, like Wong told him at the very end. He says, "Welcome to the circus."
Mm-hmm.
Like not you're not just some shucks kid, you're gonna be something someday. He's like, all right, you stepped in, now step up. You're a
Mm-hmm.
hero, you're one of us. I love that,
I,
because they did the same thing with Black Panther. His
yeah.
intro was not soft, his intro was out of the way, Captain. you know
Mm-hmm.
I'm after this guy here who killed my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and he went toe to toe with him. They gave him gravitas right off the beginning.
Right.
So when Sean decides to come back to being Sean,
Mm-hmm.
it's on like
Right.
in a heartbeat. They didn't have to build up to it. He was actually trying to explain to Katie why he went away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was dope. I thought that was so dope that there was no, there was a very short line between who and oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Disney. So actually, let me take it back to the cookie cutter comment real quick. So for those that have been living under a rock that haven't noticed, um, Frozen 2, Incredibles, Moana, Brave,
They're all the same movie.
Raya and the Last Dragon, like
They're all the same movie.
like when has Disney not delivered?
But that's the thing is you look,
They deliver.
people
That's the
try
recipe.
to, but again, yeah, you said the right word, recipe. People try to downplay a recipe because you're not making something new. But if I made something great, why would I go away from it? I don't need new. I got great. Disney figured out their formula, their recipe, and they took it to like world domination proportions. They don't need new. They just need to re-rack it every 3 years.
So Shazam was new. Shazam dealt with
But Shazam wasn't Disney.
It was one of the hardest topics that you can go up against, which is adoption. Everybody looked at their clock, went to sleep on it. Right. And that to me hurt.
Because I don't go to action movies. I want cookies. That's the point. I don't go to action movies for super deep social commentary. That's not entertaining. It may be thought-provoking. It may elevate the brain waves, but it is not entertaining. I want bang, bang, shoot 'em up, lasers and robots, superpowers in space. Like, give me all the sweets when it comes to that kind of entertainment. If I want to be pensive, that's a different type of movie. Right. That's a different company. It's a different producer. It's a different production house.
And Denis Villeneuve, I believe he directed and produced, maybe he just directed Prisoners, and it deals with kidnapping. Like and Terrence Howard and Viola Davis are running around trying to find, either I think it's their daughter or Hugh Jackman, and I can't remember the actress's name.
And good for him. When it comes to that, good for him. But I don't, if I need to laugh, if I need to be uplifted, I'm not gonna go see that movie. Sorry.
Right.
I'm just not. And it could
be
a
different genre.
Movie. It's a different genre for a different time. And so again, okay, here's another analogy for us, another scenario. We both ran track and field at the college level. So Villeneuve's clap at Marvel would be like us talking about throwers. Bro, we ain't even doing the same events.
I
can't say nothing about throwers. I can't say nothing about pole vaulters. Do y'all thing.
Which is terrifying, by the way.
When y'all want to come see jumps and sprints, come see us. But until then, do your thing. It's apples to oranges, and he's doing it because he's got a movie to hype up. I hear you, Denny. Do your thing, bro. But it's off base. It's off base.
I just wish it didn't have to go down like that, because like it's even in books for power, politics, all of it, that all press is good press if you know how to use it, right?
Right.
Because like the guys that did Ender's Game, they had some stuff out about, gay men, gay women. I'm like, why? Like, just make your movie,
Because, it's the cycle. It's the news cycle. It's more about that than it is about the substance of the argument.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think the other thing was the martial arts critique. A lot of guys coming in were saying, well, Simu Liu isn't a martial artist, so I don't know how I feel about that. And I saw a buddy of mine, he was like, the martial arts was minimal and this, that, and the other. I'm like, you do know that Donnie Yen has maybe 5 or 6 movies in the Dragon Dynasty with Sammo
bro.
Hung. Like,
And
if you wanted it, you could go get it.
Tony Liu is a boss, like a legend. And again, what do you want? Do you want when people say the martial arts doesn't look real, those are people to me who have not been in a real fight. Boxing don't look like a real fight either. You know,
not
if
the way Anderson Silva.
If you've ever been in a fight, a real damn fight, and then you watch a boxing match, those are two different things, bro.
You won't see everything coming.
When you swinging and scrapping on a playground, that's a real fight. Boxing is a sport. So to say a movie of martial arts, oh, it didn't look this or that, I'm like, okay, I'll give you that if we were talking about Blade, because we talked about this. You know, the stop motion fighting of Wesley Snipes. Yeah, like, you know, they sped that up. It's like, do the move, do this here. All right, now give me 1.25 and watch him go. Okay, that's fine. But this movie, okay, so what? He wasn't a martial artist by trade to begin with, because I'm going to see an actor portray a role. I don't want to see a martial artist try to act.
Right.
And
right.
He was an athlete. He was a parkour master.
Yes.
So his fluidity of movement, his knowledge and feel for his own biomechanics made it legit to me. Like, I'm watching it thinking, you know, I see him double fist punch. I see him, you know, be able to almost horse stance, move away, like in our style of Kung Fu.
Yeah.
And so, nah, man, it just cracks me up when people go to a movie expecting a Kung Fu tournament. I'm like, nah, that's not how it works.
Well, you said it perfectly, because I was watching, and spoiler alert, sorry, for Anderson Silva, Tito Ortiz fans. Damn. The way he caught him, you're not going to see everything. Like, especially in a real fight, you won't see like that knee. You won't see that elbow, especially if somebody's inside your center line. Like, you're not going to see everything. You can't record all of it.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. That's exactly.
So, yeah. And I mean, last thing is the MCU placement, though, because, like, where does Shang Chi, now that we've seen what I believe is what we're going to call the Mandarin fade away, the Iron Fist, can those rings take on Mjolnir? And I mean,
I think this is a god level. These 10 rings are a god level device.
We only saw the aggression of the rings in a fighting format. We only saw them defend arrows
until the end. When Shang-Chi actually has them, they change colors. They become a beacon that they never were for Wenwu. And then he also uses them in a different way with his sort of air bending style of his mother. So I think that there's more to be unlocked by them.
Yes.
But he defeated a human man bearing these rings, defeated an interdimensional beast that would suck the soul out of a person's body. These are god level devices.
Eternals.
Yeah, they're that level, I believe.
Is that a deviant?
That they fought?
That they fought. Question. Did they fight a deviant?
That's a good question. I think that it could be. It could fall under that realm, which would make perfect sense for Marvel to use that connective tissue to get to Eternals from Shang-Chi.
And the preview, when they're showing the deviants, I'm like, deviants sound a lot like Variant, Loki.
Right.
Deviants sound a lot like Variants.
Yeah, that's no accident.
When they're walking them through the hall, the history in this Forbidden Kingdom, I'm like, that looks a lot like the Eternals preview. I'm like,
And I think that's on purpose. I really do think that that's on purpose.
I'm like,
Again,
oh,
what Marvel does better than anyone,
eat
to
the
go back to
cookies.
it's cookies.
I'm
Make the
eating the
cookies.
cookies.
Yep. Cookie cutter, cookie cutter. You need a cookie cutter to make the cookies. The
Right.
connective tissue between them is the recipe. And they have done more and more of that with the introduction and advent of the sanctioned TV shows. Hashtag Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a real MCU property. Kevin Feige, bring it on in. But they've done a much better job with the connective tissue of these things, like dropping those hints that have us speculating without them saying a word. Like now here we are saying, could this possibly be? And they're like, yes, it could possibly be.
Right.
So I think you're right. I think that this thing could be a deviant type, whether it's exactly deviance or not. The way that it acted, the powers that it had, it was deviant level. And from what we've seen from the trailer previews of the Eternals, that's what a deviant would do. That's the power a deviant would have, or the power
whispers. The deviant whispered Wen-Wu all the way back. I mean, he whispered him all the way back here
and played with his mind.
promise.
This is and played with his mind. This is an animal, for lack of a better term. This is a beast, and it was speaking in his language to him about his wife. What? This beast could get inside your mind and have communication with you? That's deviant behavior.
He seduced him.
Yeah, that's deviant behavior to me.
He seduced him wholeheartedly. And so I'm torn, because in many ways I'm like, was that the Mandarin? Was that who Tony in the comic books, and then especially like animated film? Yes. I'm like,
I think that what they were doing is a little bit of, they were giving themselves a little slap on the hand. Because he even says it in his table speech. When he's eating dinner with him, he says they tried to assume my identity and call himself after a plate of chicken. You know, he thought he was big and bad by calling himself the Mandarin. He's like, this is a name I would never have used. Boom. You know, I thought that was a really clever way to distance themselves from the comic with Fu Manchu, and even Fin Fan Foom, which is a foolish name for the dragon, that initially brought the 10 rings to Earth. I thought that was a really clever, really smart, and very transparent way to have commentary from an Asian perspective to a non-Asian, predominantly non-Asian audience, to say, all of those nicknames make no sense. This is who I am. So I think we were seeing the actual Mandarin, who would never have called himself the Mandarin.
Put some respect on his name.
Right. And that's why he led off with what her name was. That's why he led off with that question of names mean everything. And then he went into this slight bit of exposition about why we're not going to call it the Mandarin. We ain't going to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I read an article explaining how what was in the comic books, it would never make it. It would never be accepted. Especially in the Asian community. The Asian community would reject that because it was so stereotypical.
Are a reflection of the times. I think things are a reflection of the times. He who has the gold makes the rules, the whole play on the golden rule. I think that a lot of cultural things that are not acceptable today were only acceptable by way of the quelling of certain voices. And even Marvel, in its progressive stance, in championing Black heroes, Asian heroes, even delving into some sexuality issues and things over the years, they've always been on the front edge of that. They were still run by a majority, a cultural majority. So some of those things are bound to slip through. But they've always been aware enough to make the changes. And that's why comics would always go back and rewrite themselves. Because with a new generation, you had new stories to tell, you had new ways to connect to the audience, and you had some things that you just had to get rid of. And so they go back on that all the time to rewrite the script, if you will.
Right. Well, good. We're gonna have to come back because I want to do a quick wrap up and talk about just all these amazing previews that we're getting from movies.
For sure.
You all stay tuned. Thank you all for joining us, Mr. RDQ. And I am Mr. Plain Wayne. We will be back with another trailer breakdown soon.
Indeed.